to wash away the sweat, the grit, and the dirt, the roads. And the good and thoughtful host made sure water was close by for family and for guests to wash. But everyone took care of washing their own feet, unless they had a servant or owned a slave. And if they did, then that person was the one who was assigned to wash the feet of guests and family, for they were inferior. But here in the Gospel we have the friend, as the disciples called him, your teacher. And as they had grown to call him increasingly more their Lord, going about one of the most menial tasks, interrupting the meal, and interrupting the flow of conversation and the fellowship of the table. We only hear about Peter, but Peter's protests echo everything the other disciples may have said and certainly thought. Jesus' action was personal and a profound illustration of sacrifice. Ignoring social convention, he laid aside the role of teacher and assumed the place of a slave. At that moment, as he took water and basin and proceeded to wash their feet, Jesus became as vulnerable to them, and by his action, as socially dependent upon them as any slave. At the end of what he did, he returned to the table, and he asked them, "Do you know what I've done to you?" Although the Gospel writer doesn't say, you can be sure the disciples were simmering with indignation and disbelief, despite the experience, and despite the time taken by Jesus to wash the feet of each one of them separately. "I set you an example," he says, "that you should also do as I have done to you. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples." So in this gospel reading, which is familiar, and in this act, which we know, we've heard and read it ourselves many times, Jesus washing the feet of his disciples is truly sacrificial, in deed and in spirit. But Jesus doesn't stop there. As John tells us, Jesus knowingly and willingly put himself in harm's way. And as